Welcome to the Rocha Revolution. We are honored today to be joined by my good friend and my CBS co-worker, Finn Gomez, political director over at CBS. Finn, thanks for being here.
Yeah, of course. Great to be on, Chuck.
Look, there's so much news happening in the world, so much news happening in Washington, D.C., so much news happening. I wanted to have a reporter on and somebody that kind of covers all of the different aspects of this to talk about, like, what's going on out there. What are we hearing? There's a bunch of new polls that's been dropping, but I want to start, Finn, by asking you, what are you hearing around Capitol Hill and the blowback on all of this Epstein stuff that you've been reporting on?
Yeah, this has been like a fascinating topic, just to watch, to cover, to have, my colleagues and reporters and cover, because it's been something that the White House has, it's gone back and forth. We've seen it, something the White House did not want to happen. And then when they saw that basically the tides were turning and it was going to happen anyway, to release the Epstein files, they were supportive of. I mean, and it's kind of engulfed and taken over, their agenda of what they wanted to do, and so they wanted to focus obviously on, some of their successes and just focus on different things. And instead, in speaking to people at the White House, it's like this has really overtaken, their agenda. And it's something that it has bred new life. I think Democrats had positioned themselves well on this politically, and I think especially following the off year election big wins they had on November 4th. I mean, it kind of gives them a bump in the right direction. It gives some momentum. No, we're starting, as you know, Chuck, into this midterm cycle now. It's begun. It begun before November 4th, but I think November 4th is like, it has flung that door wide open, and it's all everybody's talking about.
Look, I think I want you to put us in the room. What I want folks to know, we talk to a lot of political operatives, we talk a lot of thought leaders, but we get very few senior reporters like you on the Substack. And
Not too senior, man. You know what I mean?
yeah, seen a lot of gray hair senior. Covering Donald Trump, can you tell us, you were a White House correspondent before you took over the political operation at CBS. Every day there's something. I mean, my God, yesterday in the middle of all this stuff, I'm like, the Prince of Saudi Arabia is at the White House on top of Epstein happening, on top of the New Jersey elections just happening. Like, tell me how you manage all the news that comes in and what you decide you're going to cover and your reporters cover. Like, how does this differ? Let me answer it this way. Ask it this way. What's the difference between covering a Donald Trump that becomes he's accessible to reporters almost every day, compared to a Joe Biden who was never that accessible to a reporter, but there was still news happening? What's the difference in how CBS and you allocate your reporters to covering the news, Trump compared to a Biden?
Well, I mean, it's different. It's, in terms of the pace, is completely night and day. I mean, there's just so much more coming out, if you will, out of the Trump White House universe. There's just, I tell people, like, outside of Washington and even outside of the country, they always ask me, what's it like, and it is a lot. It is just constant, and the flow, and partly on purpose, right? That's part of the strategy. Stephen Miller early on and others were like, just it's about this sort of like this blitzkrieg sort of strategy, just to like kind of flood the zone. And I kind of liken it to being a soccer goalie and having 16, like, you have like, you're covering like a penalty kick, and you got 16 like balls coming at you at the same time, and you don't know which one to pick first. But I think we do a good job in covering it. I think we do a great job in covering, in my opinion. But like, compared to the first time around, I covered Trump all 4 years at the White House, in Trump 1.0. And I think the difference is, and you heard this before, but the major difference is, they're more in lockstep now. It's more uniform. They know what they're doing. He's got people that he selected that are 100% loyal. There's been a lot of controversy over that, of course, but I mean, these are folks that he picked. They're his team. And there's few leaks, if you will. Like before, it was kind of like Game of Thrones. There was like all these factions warring with each other, and for a journalist, to jump in and get in between those factions. I mean, that was great for guys like us or people like me who were just getting this information from different warring factions within the White House. This time around, it's different. You don't really have that as much. Sure, there's some fissures and some divisions, but not like it was before, where you can really get a lot from these little crevices here or there, and really kind of offset each other. And you could be, you could talk to people and one say like, yo, it's kind of like high school in a way. And you're like, hey, did you hear that? It's like talking cheese man a little bit. Like, did you hear this person say this about you? Like, what? They said that. And then they would respond, and it's like this back and forth. And now it's really not like that. I mean, it's obviously it's different. The pacing, he does talk a lot to us. I mean, love him or hate him, Trump does speak to press a lot. I mean, he also, like, recently sort of berated a couple of reporters and things of that nature. But it's a lot. It's a lot.
When you were covering the White House, was it during Trump's first election? Or was it going back to Obama?
No, I started covering the White House at the tail end of Obama, like the tail end, first like a few months. But then, but really, the first time I covered Trump was he in the 2012 cycle when he was flirting with running in 2012. Then he had a rally in West Palm Beach. I covered that one. And so, I mean, you going back to that 2011, 2012 cycle, that was really sort of, I think, really the beginning of what happened that led to 2016. So, I mean, you could make an argument that I've been covering him since 2011.
Yeah, and you've seen an evolution of
Sure.
like how things have really changed compared to what they were back in the day. The guardrails are off. Everybody around him is, but also, and this is a good lesson for Democrats, is that he is very accessible. If you believe in the concept of the attention economy, that he grabs the attention and he keeps the attention, good or bad. You are constantly talking about Donald Trump. There's very few Democrats, even going back to Obama. We did talk about Obama every day or some shit Obama had done, even though I thought Obama was the second coming. He didn't control the media. I can't say control the media. I would say control the news cycle. Is that a fair way to put it?
Well, I think it's not controlling the news cycle. I mean, maybe, you might say that as a political strategist.
Sure.
But I think the lesson here, if you're looking at tactics and dealing with the press, I think it's smart, whomever's in office,
Sure.
to speak to us, because at least whatever it is, your side's being represented. If you don't speak to us, it's not. We're talking to people around you, like, but if you're saying something, if you're including your statement or having a surrogate, whatever, but if you're talking to press, you're getting your side out there. And I think that goes for Democrats too. Like, the more you talk to us, the better it is. Like, and it's also, transparency is important for any administration. Like, as members of the fourth estate, as verified press, members of the press, we have a responsibility in this republic to check our leaders. Like, that's, whomever's in power, that's our responsibility. So, I mean, and not everything we're going to report on is going to be, positive. It's going to be honest. It's going to be fair, and fearless. But frankly, we have responsibility to the American people. We have the responsibility to voters and potential voters. Like, that's who our number one. That's who my number one target audience is.
Right. And I think that
better for you.
Exactly. And I think that's what I was getting at when I meant by control, not controlling what you're doing, but controlling the flow of information.
Trying to, yeah.
Because every day there's something, and I think that this is something that Democrats could learn from, because not saying you have to be out there and doing this crazy shit, but he understands that there's value. When folks call me and say, Chuck, I want to run for office, I'm like, are you running against anybody who's ever run and spent a bunch of money? Because there's a certain amount of value in name ID of folks knowing who you are. And we forget that. We think, well, we have the right ideas and we have the exact great policy and we have a policy solution for that.
Yeah.
Well, policy solutions don't always win elections, right? And so I think that'll lead into my next question is, you've also been covered a lot of elections. You've also
Democrats too, yeah.
You've covered lots of Democrats, you've covered Republicans, you've covered lots of things. But I think what makes you really unique in that space is you've seen the evolution of the Latino voter, being a Latino yourself, being one of the only Latino senior execs in a newsroom, you have barely covered.
First and only Latino political director of any of the major
Yeah,
platforms.
and that's what I'm getting at is that you have seen this, you've been elevated now, and I'm curious to what your reporters are telling you about. You've had this Latino vote that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Finn, the only thing me and you talked about was the swinging right of this electorate and how they had moved towards Donald Trump and how he was now and Latinos were going to help make Republicans a majority everywhere. And they were going to redistrict Texas based off of the backbone of how Republican Latinos would be. And then 2 weeks ago, oh my God, you saw a 24-point swing in certain areas and a swing all the way around from the right to the left with Latino voters. What are you hearing from your reporters in Virginia, New Jersey, and other places where we saw this swing? And the CBS polls.
Yeah, I mean that's a great question because it's something you and I talk about a lot, whether being on your Substack or not. I mean, we just talk a lot about Latino voters. Look, what I wrote I wrote a thesis in my like 20 years ago that Latino voters were going to be the swing vote that would decide an election, and I think
Wait. So you saw this coming 20 years ago,
yes, sir, I
and
did.
you were writing theses about it. Is that at some big fancy college you was at?
I don't know if it was fancy, but they asked me to do it, and I pitched the story, I pitched the idea, and I mean, it took me some cycles, but I think I was proven right. And I
Right.
think that what you're seeing, we talked about this also before 22, also that you seeing this sort of swinginess amongst this crucial electorate. I mean, you have what 68 million Latinos in this country now. Like, this is a sizable, huge electorate that can impact not only presidential elections, like we saw in 2024, when 48% of Latino voters supported Donald Trump, 54% of Latino males, right? As you know, Chuck, but what you saw on November 4th, what you saw in New Jersey, what you saw in Virginia, and really in other smaller elections throughout the country, is you saw this shift back. And it also parallels with what we've been seeing in polling. Polling has shown since the beginning of the Trump administration, his support amongst Latino voters has cratered. It has dropped significantly. We've seen that across the board in newer polls, the CBS polls, our own polls. We also saw it in the Unidos polls that came out, Somos Votantes polls that came out today, that shows that like that support that he got that was a crucial part of the Trump coalition in 2024 has dropped. It's not there. That doesn't mean they're necessarily going to Democrats. They did in New Jersey and Virginia, which should give Democrats some hope. But it's that swing, it's that pendulum that we're seeing, and I think within that structure, and I'm just saying objectively, within that, Latino voters hold a lot of power as an independent, swingy voter, if you will. I know independents, they're not independents, but not all of them. But I think that you see that they go back and forth, and that could be the difference in some of these key battleground districts. A year from now, right? You talk about Texas. Texas is fascinating because they did base. I mean, that's part of like that lawsuit that the ruling that happened yesterday, that ruled against the Texas redistricting, in part because they said that the federal panel of judges, three panels, said, Chuck, that the Republicans were using race-based gerrymandering, Latino voters, to create these new districts. At the same time, I've spoken to a lot of Democrats and Republicans who say, Republicans can't bank on that Latino vote like they did in 2024. And I think what what we saw in Virginia and New Jersey shows that, right? It does show that. So, they're up for grabs, if you will, in a lot of ways. And I think, it's being noted.
Yeah, and I think they're probably one of the last bastions of truly swingy votes, right? That you can't put them. Oh, look at that Topo Chico! Oh my God, bringing it home. Oh, you know what? You drink those all day. I'm gonna get my other headset. Hang on, you do that. I'm gonna grab my other headset. I don't like the way this
Topo
is.
Chico.
Do that.
Topo Chico. We're not. This is not. This is not an endorsement here. My personal endorsement, yes, but they're not one of our sponsors. But it's delicious. I crush these, man. I drink like 6 of these a day. But it's got to be with the lime. It's got to be with the lime, man. I like the twist of lime. Makes it good.
Nice.
Yeah, let's
Nice,
go.
nice,
What do you
nice.
got?
I was going to say that the Latino voters have really become the marginal group that has nobody can really put their hand on. Now, these folks are not running back to Democrats, but a lot of them did. But in the last election in New Jersey and Virginia, it was with Latino voters somewhere between 7 and 20%, 7 to 17% switch. But the other big thing that nobody talks about in this reporting is that a bunch of Latinos and folks overall that had voted for Donald Trump just stayed home because it was an off
Yeah.
year election.
Yeah.
And nobody's talking about that. We keep comparing 25 to 24 elections when they're very different. The 24 turnout was way up here. The 21 turnout's way down here. But we're judging them off the percentage of success when it's just not the case, right, Finn?
No, that's a great point, and you're absolutely right. And that's something they didn't Latino voters didn't turn out. I mean, they don't typically on an off year election. A lot of Democrats, a lot of Republicans, a lot of voters don't typically, but they didn't. And you're right. And compared to like previous off year cycles. However, again, the turnout, why turnout matters is that those that did turn out voted predominantly for the Democrats on the ticket.
If everything that everybody has, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
If everything that everybody has said is factually correct, it's just missing one sentence in every bit of the reporting or the analysis done by anybody. Is the line is of the people that voted. Oh my God, there was a 24-point swing of the people that voted. The Latino vote moved dramatically back to the Democrats of the people that voted. Let me make my case. In place like a small microcosm of what was told across the country on election day is, you know where Manassas City, Virginia is, Finn?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a suburb.
So
It's a suburb of D.C. Our good brother here was born and raised in the city.
From Washington D.C. Yeah,
We'll talk about the Commanders and you being the field goal kicker later. But in Manassas City, there's about 17,000 people who live in the city, Finn.
Yeah.
And in that city, in the last election a year ago for Kamala Harris, Finn, Kamala Harris won by 20% in that city. Now, that city is not going to surprise you because you're from here, is 49% Latino in Manassas City. Again, Kamala Harris wins it by 20 points. 1 year later, 2 weeks ago, Abigail Spanberger wins it by 43, doubling the percentage to the Democrats. But let me give you the most important number for you to know. Of the 17,000 people that live there, in the presidential election that was over a year ago, Finn, 6,000 people voted, and Kamala Harris wins by 20. Guess how many people voted 2 weeks ago? 3,900. Just over half. And she wins by 43 points, doubling it, but it's less people voted. So of the people that voted is the sentence missing of all the analysis. Take it from the strategist, because I know not to read too much into it. I'm still happy as a Democrat. I still think it shows great signs as a Democrat. But I also know if turnout was at the same level it was in 2024, that's when it'll told me an apples to apples comparison. How was that laying with you there, Mr. Gomez?
Well, it's really interesting because I mean, a couple of things. I did have the opportunity to speak to both the campaign managers for Cheryl and for Spanberger, right?
Okay.
And to me, it's interesting because I did ask them about the Latino vote and like how significant it was, and their major takeaway. I think this connects to your point. Their major takeaway was the reason they won with Latino voters and the reason the ones that turned out predominantly voted for them was because they focused primarily on the economy. They focused primarily on cost of things, inflation, things that we've been talking about for a couple of years here, Chuck. But they believe that the appeal, like it wasn't. Yes, immigration was a top issue, was a key issue, But even if in that Unidos poll that came out the day before the election, the top 4 out of the 5 top issues for Latino voters, and they did an oversample of 6 states with high populations of Latino voters. And that was with Matt Barreto from Matt Barreto is, a good friend of yours, and also Darren Shaw, who's a Republican, who does polling for Fox. And what they came out, it was like out of these oversampling of Latino voters in these key states, Virginia and New Jersey not being 2 of them, but California, Arizona, New York, and so on, Texas. But it was economy, it was cost of things, it was inflation. Immigration was the 5th out of the top 5 issues. Still important, but it wasn't the dominant issue, which I found a little surprising, but it makes sense because this is what Latino voters voted for Trump in 2024. Also, like they're following their North Star overall collectively for them is the economy, just like everyone else. James Carville made a very, very famous line that people use to this day. It's like, it's the economy, stupid. On November 4th of this year, it was affordability, stupid. And that's what was working, not just for Latinos, but that was the bigger issue overall. But again, they're focused like many other other demographics, they were focused on inflation, cost things, and economy. Affordability.
Well, as you know, and we've talked about, my firm knocked on over 100,000 Latino doors in New Jersey, mainly around Passaic. And at the doors, we were hearing the affordability, but more
That went
in...
for Trump. That went for Trump in 2024.
Absolutely. There was a giant swing. There's an analysis that my firm is putting out later today. Finn, I'll actually text it to you here in a minute when we get off this call, of what happened in Passaic with the door knocks that we did. And what we heard at the door there reinforces what I can talk about now, but couldn't talk about 2 weeks ago, which is there was more than just affordability. They would be very specific about the things that had went up because they notice it because they're living paycheck to paycheck. So if the rent goes up $50, that $50 is not more they're getting. They got to figure out where it's coming out of, and they have no savings. So it was, the utilities were always in the top 3. So I think Mikey Sherrill was onto something. Insurance premiums, whether you were on ACA or not, were just out of control. And if you were in a union, which is heavy in New Jersey, get this, Finn, they would say that every time we're up for collective bargaining with our agreement, anything that we're going to get in the form of a raise, they take that money and they roll it over into the premium cost of our health care. And we really haven't had a real wage increase in many years. And there was a lot of frustration and anxiety about that. And then the point about immigration is, this is where the posters get this wrong, is they ask about it being the most important. And it may not be the reason that they vote for somebody as much as what's the cost of gas, groceries, my rent, or my insurance, things you have to have. It's this underlying toe of anxiety of these masked agents in these neighborhoods terrorizing people who are not, quote unquote, the criminals that we were promised would be deported. That was a through line in this heavy immigrant community of Passaic because they did not like what Trump was doing. They agreed with Trump. This is why they voted for him, Finn, to your point, that it was fine to deport immigrants who had come here and broke the law and were heinous criminals, as Donald Trump would report or would say. But these weren't the people that were getting deported, and it really was making them pissed because they were locking up friends of theirs who the only illegal thing that they had done is flown to a country to escape some kind of bad shit that was happening to them in the country they were for, and probably were undocumented, and that was the only law they probably ever broke.
And I think you're right. I mean, and I think that, in Passaic, I was there. I visited Passaic a couple weeks before the election this year, and I just, I was fascinated by, what my anecdotal connection was like. Yeah, they were talking about the economy too, affordability, like you said. But I do think immigration and I think the optics, the visuals that you're seeing from these violent takedowns, detentions of detaining people. People have been in this country for years. There's the optics that are, from a political perspective, you assume is having a major effect. And it is having, obviously, an effect within the Latino community, obviously. you are seeing more people galvanize in certain areas. Like you saw that in California, like ahead of the redistricting vote. Right? You did see that where Latino voters were more galvanized than maybe they would be for it's for a redistricting issue, right? But it was the way of saying this is a vehicle for me to push back on. This is an opportunity for me to push back on what they perceived as just Trump administration overreach and all things of that nature. But I also think, Chuck, that it's important. But you are seeing it's having an impact not just on Latino voters, but it's having an impact on sort of middle America. Like that's where and independents. There was a poll out today for Maris, in a generic ballot, right? Generic ballot. If the midterms were held today, Democrats had like a 14-point lead advantage over Republicans. And I think that, it doesn't say it specifically there, but, I think anecdotally, what I'm hearing from places like Iowa, where like sort of, white middle American folks who may have voted for Trump are saying, this is not what we expected. This is not what we wanted. And same, like the thinking is the same thing what you said is like, hey, when you're talking to some of those Latino voters in New Jersey, that they wanted the focus to be on, on maybe the most recent, immigrants that came to this country instead of people that have been here for years. It's having an effect in areas that otherwise you wouldn't expect. And I think that's where Republicans need to have some consternation as they look ahead to the midterms. In some areas, it's very, they approve of these hardline policies, of course. But I do think that is having an effect in other places that you would not expect.
I think this week you've seen in North Carolina, there's lots of reporting out about what's been going on down there with the raids just this week, today and yesterday.
Carolina, great. North Carolina. Oh
North Carolina. And me and Finn know this because we're political animals and we cover this. I work on it, is that North Carolina probably has the single most important Senate race of 2026. So this is all happening under the umbrella of a Republican senator who's retiring in a place where Democrats just elected a Democratic governor just a year ago in a Republican wave election. A Democrat got elected in North Carolina. So you can see what I'm explaining is the swinginess of that state. And now you have these masked ICE agents reaping hell in an immigrant community down there. And folks are pissed is what I'm seeing. You, Finn?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing though. Like it's in areas where you wouldn't necessarily expect. Yes, there's been significant growth, Latino population growth since the pandemic in North Carolina because of their economy, right? So you've seen a lot of Latino, the Latino population has grown, but it's like, will that have an impact on voters who may have voted for Trump in 2024, who may align with him on other issues, but say, wait, this is too much. And I think you could be seeing that effect in places like North Carolina. You could. Could it impact the Senate race? Yes, it could. Absolutely. And that is, I think, a marquee race. I think it is, it's going to be, between Whatley and Cupper, it's going to be one of those, it is in my opinion, the biggest race of the year, but of next year. But,
the point to make there is that you made it earlier, I think very wisely, Finn, is when you were describing the swinginess of this vote and the way that you've covered this electorate over a long period of time. And then you talked about the impact of those voters on the midterms. This is a microcosm of what you're talking about in North Carolina, the most targeted Senate race in America, where the largest growing sector of the electorate by percentage has been Latino voters over the last century. These are the second and third generation of migrant farm workers who went there 20 and 30 years ago in the tobacco fields. Lots of my friends down there who've come of age, went to college, who are all U.S. citizens who now are voters. And those voters will probably determine, based off of the small margin in North Carolina, who's going to be the next U.S. senator. That's exactly the point you were making, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so yes, I mean, I think that's exactly the point I'm making, and that it's having a bigger impact. It's going to be having a bigger impact.
And that's told over and over again in congressional races and governor's races. There are over 35 marginal congressional seats, and over 40% of them have more than 50% Latino population. telling that same story.
Absolutely, and look, and it's in places that you don't expect. I think that like some of these battleground districts and some of these battleground statewide races in 26, like I think again the Latino vote will be someone that will decide some of these key races. Absolutely, and
In
and
in
and,
a
and you got to ask yourself. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, it's just to me, it's like, but also, I just also want to like sort of double down on the impact that I think that the economy is still what they predominantly will.
If you say what's the reason they're going to vote, I'll promise you it's going to be about what make me make more money or make things cost less. That's always going to be the
Affordability. Yep.
right, right. And we have to get specific Democrats about affordability. And in these obscure places that you don't think about, me and Finn think about them, but the rest of America is like, oh, yeah, I'm sure there's some congressional races in Florida or Texas where Latinos matter. No, the right places we're talking about is in Nebraska, too, which is one of only 3 congressional races that Kamala Harris won that's represented currently by a Republican who is retiring. And in that race in Nebraska, which is Lincoln, you have an emerging Latino community that makes up 18% of the electorate in a congressional seat in Lincoln, Nebraska. You're talking about Pennsylvania 7 in Allentown and Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, where Puerto Ricans and Dominicans make up 23% of the voters in the Lehigh Valley. These are the little nuggets where you won't see or think about Latinos, but they're making the difference, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you brought up the Lehigh Valley because that's one that got a lot of attention in 2024 also. But you're right. I mean, it's in areas that you don't think of. Like I think of Georgia. Everybody's talking about Georgia as well. There's got some big races coming up in Georgia. There is also there like you said that mirrors the North Carolina growth. There's a big Latino population growth. There's been a boom happening in that state also. You wouldn't think it in the South. I was talking to some top Democratic Party officials who said they're a lot of their major, they are focusing a lot on the South because they think that that's more right for them to make some gains as well. And I think you got to look at these 2 major states of North Carolina and Georgia that a few years ago you wouldn't even think of them as being a realm where Latino voters would be significant enough to sway a race. But I think now they are.
Well, I think that gives a good wrap up on that topic. And the final topic I want to talk about is you mentioned that you were born and raised in Washington, D.C. I didn't think that, is there a growing Latino group of history about Washington, D.C. that I should know about? I live here. How about that
You
softball?
got you got a couple hours. No, yeah, I mean the Salvadoran community obviously is the biggest Latino group in this area in DMV, not just DC, but obviously in Virginia.
These are also the same Latinos in Virginia by majority, like who had this impact that Finn was talking about in the Virginia race. They're not Mexicans, they're not Cubans, they're immigrants from El Salvador and their children,
El
correct?
Salvador. Yeah, that's right. You're absolutely right. And you're looking at second, third generation Salvadoran American community, Salvadoran American voters who, um, it, in the last midterm, you had against Spanberger, you had a Salvadoran Latina MAGA candidate who ran against Spanberger in her congressional reelection
Interesting.
which was interesting. But but they again, Spanberger did very well with Latinos in Virginia, very well. And I think that I know Democrats that I spoke to since the election feel they think that that gives them a boost. Also, they do think that the Salvadoran community is the one that if you live in the DMV region, that is a major one to target because of their growth, because of their size. And even though they predominantly vote for Democrats, they don't necessarily always do. So I think that I think again, if you're running Republican or Democrat or whatever in this area, more likely than not, um, you're going to have some sort of Latino outreach for this specific communities. Also Bolivians and Peruvians, but
Yeah, a lot of
a
Bolivians too.
diverse community. A lot of Bolivians, yeah.
So
Seriously.
was your parents married when they got here? Did they meet here in DC?
They met in DC. Yeah, they met. My mom was an immigrant from El Salvador. She came here when she was 18. And she actually came here under a program under the Nixon administration.
Wow.
Nixon administration, right? To try to appeal to promising young immigrants, right? And so she came over here, went to school here, ended up working for two, Rosa Vilma Ayala de Gomez. My mom, RIP, she died when I was younger, but she was a trailblazer. She worked for two presidents. She ended up working two presidential administrations. And she was badass. She was my parents, they actually met at a LULAC meeting in
Oh, wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And my mom, my parents were always really involved in politics. They made me read the Washington Post when I was a kid, and
This is why you became a reporter. You're a nerd. This is what happens.
I'm a nerd, man. I can play baseball too, brother, and football. I did,
But you're still a nerd. You know news and you know reading.
proudly, bro. I'm a proud nerd, man. That's right.
Writing these theses in the thesis college. All of these things.
That's right.
Well, look, I think that I wanted you to tell that story because I wanted folks to understand that this immigrant story is told all across America. Now, Finn Gomez, rest in peace, his mother, who would be so proud. He's now one of the only senior executives in a newsroom doing what he's doing. He's opened the doors for so many other Latino reporters, and this is what happens. Now, think about it. Mother immigrating here from another country get this, y'all sit down, by a Republican president who's like, maybe we should have and encourage immigration to a country, give them opportunities to flourish here. This morning on the TVs, I had reminded folks that immigrants in this country, undocumented immigrants, not talking about Finn's mother, but undocumented immigrants in this country have paid just last year $28 billion in Social Security benefits. That means they're working on a job, y'all, that somebody's taking out their Social Security taxes for a Social Security that they will never get unless they become citizens, which is not a guarantee by no realm of the imagination. And they paid almost $30 billion with a B dollars into our Social Security. This is why the importance of the immigration story is told. This is why immigration matters to voters. This is why it may not be the number one issue, and this is where Democrats get it wrong, but it's told through an emotion. We're all proud of our immigration story. We're all proud, whether we're Irish or Italian or anything else. We tell that story of that first gen who got on the boat or did whatever. Well, in the last 30 years, there really hasn't been a line to get into, so folks have risked limb and legs to get over here to have a better place for their folks to actually live. And I think that story's told all across America, and I think a lot of people are mad at Donald Trump because of what's going on with the way that we're looking at immigration now and the way that we've always looked at it, demagoguing a group of people just because they got brown skin. I'm not putting that on Finn, but I'm saying that's the way it's considered, especially with a bunch of cops with masks on their face. I was closing that. It was blinding me, all my lights in my studio.
I like the lights. Yeah.
Hey, so let's talk about Washington. I this weekend had the privilege and the pleasure to go over to Madrid, Spain, and watch Finn's favorite football team, the Commanders, lose a football game. Now, if they could kick a field goal, Finn, we would have won this thing going away. But they can't kick a field goal. What's it like living with the emotion of a team that has won world championships that sucks so bad right now?
Well, it's tough, man. I got up early. I know you were there. You and Ebony were there. I was very envious, and I got up early to watch that tough game, that tough loss. We do need a kicker. I could kick better than anybody they had. I'm glad they fired that guy. That guy's terrible. He lost the game for us, but it's been a tough season. But the one thing just that I think connects what we're talking about well is that when my Salvadoran family, my mom's side, my mom's Salvadoran family, when they came here, they didn't know anybody. My mom was here, she didn't know anybody, she had no family. And then when the rest of her family came here, my tios and tias, they saw, they mainly came here like the late 70s and 80s. They saw that how popular the Washington
Redskins at the time.
Redskins, yeah. And it was like part of their immigrant story was to be diehard Redskins fans, diehard Washington fans. And we for us, it was like, you go to church and then you come home and you watch them beat Dallas or lose to Dallas, whatever it might be. But that was like it was part of it. We were almost decked out in our gear. Like for us, it was like it was so important. It became such a part of our identity as a family because then for them it was like they would connect with the culture here by being such avid fans, and they did, and we knew everything about like all these players and like Art Monk and Gary Clark and and Doug Williams and whomever else, like, and all these great players, Joe Gibbs, legend, Joe Gibbs, and but that was part of it, man. And even now, like I mean, it was even now we talk about it like with like my generation and the ones behind me, like it's you gotta be a Washington fan. Like it's so important. So last year was like, oh man, it was such a great week. We were connecting. My primos, my cousins and I were doing on our group chats talking about it, talking about how great they were, Jaden Daniels. And this season's just been hard, man. But win or lose, man, you gotta stick with your team, man. Win or lose and I will, man, no matter what.
Listening and watching you react to the football, and y'all know that most of you know on my Substack, I played football for 9 years. I was a big football player. I was all state in Texas. I love football. Big boy. We talked about it as a big boy. I always thought I would be a football coach, which today I'm still kind of a football coach in my own way. But the thing that makes me think about this is, Finn, what you described is something Democrats, I'm going to go back to politics, we get wrong is if y'all are listening or watching, watch the emotion in Finn Gomez when he talks about his family and their ties to a football team. Who's been showing up at football games in the last year or two? Donald Trump. He's been showing up, going, love him or hate him. It's culture. And he's showing folks that he's not too good to go. When's the last time a Democrat went to a football game and actually, piped up about it? Like these are the pieces of we've been missing because we've been too busy talking to people about our policy book. Don't get me wrong, our policy book is important, but culture of football, culture of going to church on Sunday, then going home and watching football. I did the same thing Finn did. I was older than Finn. I was in a different part of the world. We couldn't be more culturally different. Mexican redneck, East Texas, city boy, growing up in D.C., all the things. But we both had a love of football. We both loved our families. We would go to church, then we would come home. Finn probably to a Catholic church, me to a Baptist church, but then watch football. So this is things that bind us together as Americans. And in mine and Finn's cases, sons and grandsons of immigrants that bind us together, that made us American, that made us proud Americans. No different than any black fan or any white fan. These are pieces that we miss when we're trying to culturally connect with folks that are just middle America who don't think about politics every day like me and Finn Gomez. We have a lot of privilege to have the jobs where we can do that. But regular folks just trying to figure shit out every day, they want to just forget about their life for 3 hours and watch a fucking football game and drink some beer and hope their wife ain't in their ass. Just making sure that they can enjoy their day. Like that's what life is supposed to be about. But we forget about that. We make it other things when this culture piece of getting together and doing it. So being in Madrid, it connected all the things for you, Finn, because I went to your wedding in Spain and I was like, Finn should be here. So we FaceTime with Finn when we were over there just to rub it in a little bit. But Finn, I got to ask you, who is your all-time hard question, all-time favorite Redskin / Commander?
Oh man,
Is it John Riggins? Is it Williams? Is it?
I mean, like honestly, I would probably say like Daryl Green or, but honestly, for like my cousins and I, probably because he was so good for such a short amount of time when tragedy befell him, but was Sean Taylor, man. We love Sean. I love Sean Taylor. One of the greatest safeties of all time. Would have been a Hall of Famer if his life didn't come to an end tragically after that home break-in. But I would probably say, like, he just had a special place. We saw him come up, man, and he was like, but I would probably say Daryl Green, man, because I loved him, man. I loved him. He was like the best cornerback. He's the fastest man in the NFL. I just really just love seeing him play, man. And there's a lot of players, man, that I really like. I think but it's been a long time since we won the Super Bowl, man. It's been so long, but it's all right. Win or lose, man. I'm gonna keep watching them on Sunday, man, and they're probably gonna lose again.
The good news is they can't lose this Sunday because they have a bye week.
They have a bye week.
The second thing you should know is that the guy sitting in front of me, at the football game who had gotten free tickets from FanDuel, who the guy next to him told me he spent so much money gambling that they just gave him tickets to the Madrid game. So let that sit with you. He was wearing a Sean Taylor jersey.
No way.
Yes.
21, baby. 21. Yeah.
And you should also know that I had two favorite players growing up. Now, I am 10 years older than you because I know how old you are, because one time me and you and our wives climbed a mountain together. So I know how old you are.
That's right. Yeah.
My two favorite players were.
You beat me by a lot. You beat me by a lot.
I did, but it wasn't because I didn't. I'm crazy. Anyway, Too Tall Jones with the Dallas Cowboys and Mean Joe Green with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I thought those two men were like 8 foot tall, 500 pounds, and bulletproof in my mind as a small boy. And I just thought these big hulking football players is who I admired to be. I wanted to be one of them. And to today, to what Finn just said about me running up a mountain at 56 years old like I was 30, is I work out every day. Rain, sleet, or snow, because I've always thought that that's what a man should do. And that's what a man should be, is Too Tall Jones, Mean Joe Green, these big hulking figures. And I was always a fat boy growing up. So I was always dealing with my weight. So going to the gym kept me, the difference today of being 200 pounds, which I am, instead of 300 pounds, is not eating 4 cheeseburgers at night and eating one of Ebony's salads or whatever else. We won't get into Ebony's diet because she eats twice as much as me and she's as little as a twig. But we'll leave that to the side because she gets on my fur. But me and Finn both way out kicked our coverage on our wives. I'll promise you that.
100% agree.
Last question we do on this Substack. Go ahead, Finn.
Can I say one
Yes.
thing, man? But the only thing about Mean Joe Green is that Mean Joe Green couldn't have hiked up Half Dome like you did. I'm just saying.
Mean Joe Green probably would. Yeah.
But
yeah. He would have had a hard time.
You're a hardworking guy, man. And you're also like,
But I give you credit.
Major thing.
I give you credit.
That's one thing. My mom always taught me though. Like you gotta. She's like they're gonna be people bigger, taller, faster than you. But you gotta outwork everybody. And that's one thing I've always tried to do. But I work hard.
Yeah, and that's why you went. That's why you went all the way to the end with me at Ebony, and then we came all the way back. We went up as a team, and we came back as a team. It may take one or two of us a little bit longer, but we all made it to the end. We all made it back, and we had an amazing time. For any of you who have never been to Yosemite, you should go. It's a national treasure. When we got there, I was fortunate to get in the lottery. We got 4 tickets, and so me and Finn and our wives went this summer and had the time of our lives. Finn, we end this Substack by asking you 2 questions. One is, back to sports. I know you played some baseball back in your day. I need to know if you were playing today and you were batting cleanup. I need to know what your walk-up song would be.
My walk-up song? Oh man.
Oh.
Got it. Like, I mean, I don't want to sound like Adrian, but I would definitely say Bad Bunny, man. I honestly think that Nueva York is one of my favorite songs. I would also say yeah, man. Anything like Takiti maybe. Yeah, definitely Bad Bunny and I know you like I know you've become a convert recently, Chuck, to El Conejo.
I like the rabbit.
What do you call him?
The rabbit, Bad Rabbit.
Bad Rabbit, yeah, that's what we call him. But to me, I think I really do. Sarah, my wife, has always told me that I'm always like listening on a loop, man, just all the time. I think this album's the best album he's ever had.
Well, the good news for you, we can connect this right back to the NFL, because guess who's going to be playing at the Super Bowl?
That's true. That's right. Or I would say even some old school Jay-Z, maybe, like maybe some old school Jay-Z.
Did you see who played at the Madrid halftime?
No.
Daddy Yankee.
Oh yeah, that's right. You told me that. That's cool. Oh yeah.
So just so y'all know, it's walk-up song has to have some backbone to it. It has to be a little edgy. So mine would definitely be Thunderstruck by AC/DC. With the guitar, yeah, it would be awesome.
That tracks, man. That tracks. I can see you.
Definitely.
That tracks, man.
Brother Finn Gomez, it's a pleasure to work with you every day. Thanks you for CBS for working with me and letting me be a part of your team. Thank you for being with us today. Huh?
Sorry, what was the last question? You guys said
Oh, the last question. I asked you the sports question. Oh, the last question. Thanks for catching me there is whether it's your wife or your mama or one of your tias, I need to know your go-to favorite all-time meal that you could eat every day.
Oh, damn, man. That is a really good
Woo!
question. Dude, my mom would make these killer paella. It's 3 types of paella on Christmas Eve, and she would make it. It would be
Three different types.
Yeah, she was an amazing cook. She was incredible. Not only did she do all these things, she was an activist. She started like her own like a group to for like the Salvadorian community when I was a kid. And on Christmas we'd go and like hand out gifts and we do all these things for the community all the time. She was always like that, like give back to the community, give back to the community. No matter how far you go, remember to turn around and offer your hand to those who come behind you. That was her like mantra. Like, no matter this is a privilege, to do what we do and to help others. But, I would her paella, man, like, I don't it just she would do these delicious they're just amazing, and they're, like, famous. She'd do 3 different types, and then on Christmas Eve, she'd do 3 different types, and then we go to, like, midnight mass, come back, open gifts, and I'd have more of that paella, man.
On
And also,
Christmas Eve.
my grandmother's RIP, my grandmother's pupusas, they were fire, man. They were so good. A good pupusa is, like, the best in the world, like, oof.
I had amazing ones in Belize. I told you about this. These little women were making them, and they were the best I'd ever eaten. Find you something you enjoy. There's something that we don't talk about when we talk about Latino culture, which I just described to you, right? Which is food, family, and music. All of those things that don't mean white people or black people don't enjoy those 3 things, but there's something special about the way Latinos interact with food, music, and family that really pull us all together, right, Finn?
Oh, hell yeah, man. And also, like, our Christmases are the best. I'm just gonna say it because, like, we party like, we used to party till, like, 3 or 4 in the morning, man. Like, our whole family would be, like, dancing, there'd be salsa, there'd be merengue, there'd be pupusas and rice dishes and everything. And, it's like Christmas Eve. I love my family, but you're absolutely right. I love your point on about culture too, man, because I think that's really important. Really important.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning into the Rocha Revolution this week. We want to thank our special guest, Finn Gomez from CBS News, and thank all of the listeners out there. Don't forget to tell your friends to subscribe. When you see this, please share it with your friends. You want to get underneath the hood. You want to learn about the Latino vote. You want to learn about the NFL. You want to talk about Bad Bunny. You come over here to this Substack. We got some shit going down. Finn Gomez, till next time, you be good, my brother.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.